Alrighty. Hello. It's April 10th, 2022, 10 p.m. Welcome. I like this time. I'm a little tired at this time, so uh, that's one thing I don't like. But I've been having a really good weekend celebrating my daughter, her birthday. Been reading some really great books. Many Thomas Sheridan books. We've discussed sorcery. We've discussed Walpurgis Night. I thought I was going to dig into next the Druid Code. But I also leafed through these others. So the Mysterious Round Towers of Ireland, I just got into a little bit. I just love Thomas Sheridan. He's so interesting. So he just has so many great quotes that he uses. He's got just a great, easy, like layman's term kind of way of speaking. And so when he's talking about history or mythology or folklore, it's accessible to somebody who's never heard about what he's talked about. And I laughed when my friend introduced me to the work of Thomas Sheridan, because my complaint to him was like, oh yeah, well the problem is, he's talking about so much stuff that I don't know about yet, and I have to take all these notes. And I had to stop in the middle of reading and go and look things up. And so, I think that's the interesting thing about the way that we learn is it's not just through repetition, but it's also tangential. So, you may be in a live in-person class with a professor and he'll have kind of an outline for what he's going to want to go through, but there's always going to be these hiccups in the lesson because people are going to stop and say, hey, wait a minute, I missed a step, or, my tool is not working properly, or I don't know how to do this. And so it's interesting, we're so conditioned now to watch pre-produced, manufactured media and things that have been cleverly targeted, and the marketing geniuses and all these creatives, they know the tools to get somebody in a hook, an emotional connection, and they can do it really fast now, and we used to read novels and read about characters and have authors that would develop characters so that we would fall in love with them. And I think that's the thing we're losing with the quick media is, we're definitely attracted to things now. We get obsessed with things. We get consumed by things. But are we really falling deeply in love with a story and how it makes I always remember reading books that would just make me cry and sob, and that actually felt so good, that was the therapy, until life got so busy that I couldn't read anymore. I didn't have the time for it or whatever. I made myself too overscheduled to fully use that as proper therapy. And I think the last few months especially have taught me, for example, I have my literal basket of books. This thing is so heavy. And yet it's not a burden, you know? It's been so exciting to dive into my books and to read them at my leisure and, like, just be so excited to read one line and be like, "Whoa," and have to marinate on the thought, you know, and not move on, not just keep going like it's a homework assignment, you know? And I've been thinking a lot about this when it comes to like encouraging people to read. And it's an interesting idea because like I think we hardly have enough time in our lives to think anymore. We're so bombarded with notifications and interruptions, you know, and I kind of think that's what the clock was all about. I think that was a big step in in the takeover of the human like capacity to just trip out and think about thoughts and to dream while awake and to daydream and to fall asleep in the middle of the afternoon and you know sure like our I'm sure our ancestors had it tough at times, but I think also like when you had these small tribes that looked out for each other, yeah, there was probably always somebody awake, you know, watching over things on alert. There was probably always somebody to keep the fire going. There was always somebody, you know, figuring out how to contribute. And, you know, nowadays, I just wonder if this is the, you know, this is the mirror, like as above, so below. So if, if our lives used to have purpose and meaning, and now, and for the last um, decades, centuries of literature that have been talking about, you know, technology putting humans out of jobs and how our identities used to so be tied to our jobs and what we do. And that's kind of a thought process that's been conditioned into us. I don't think it's actually natural. I think what is more natural is our place in our tribe, you know, people feeling like they're equal contributors just because they're there, just because their presence provides. Um, and that's what I've been really drawn to in terms of other content creators, people that I've been choosing to spend my time with while consuming, um, you know, a big social media platform like YouTube. Um, it's a vast, vast space, and it's just like anything else in the public square. Like you can't believe everything, and you have to be wary of what people are selling. But if you're present when you're paying attention, you can discern pretty well through content when you're looking at what are people trying to sell you on, you know? And you can get a lot of if we don't start paying attention to these red flags, you know, if we just keep ignoring them, then people are going to keep screaming. You know, they're going to keep screaming about the end of the world cuz yeah, as above so below. If we used to be so in tune with nature, then we've buried that past. You know, and now we are so like in our heads and up out in the clouds and like have no sense of reality anymore. We're talking about, you know, losing Title IX protections for women in sports because of a very small minority of people um, that that you know want to impose something upon people. you know, it's a conversation we're not even allowed to have though, because then you're considered a bigot. And that's the last thing I would have ever thought myself to be. And so I think it's a really humbling time because folks just they have to be willing to both be, respectful and humane to somebody to their face. Like, just, you know, you don't have to use a pronoun when you say, "Hi, how are you today?" I hope you're well. I love your glasses. I hope you're having a nice day. Are you staying warm? You know, I mean, small chat is a lost art, you know, even like in challenging moments with some pretty bombastic people in my life. Like, I can keep it cool when they're freaking out about certain controversial topics. I can still give them a hug at the end of the night and wish them well, And I'm fortunate that I'm able to not even get mad and triggered by this stuff anymore because when these people are freaking out, well, everybody should just do this. And, when people are absolutists about, oh, well, I know exactly what's going on, you know, it's just unfortunate because it doesn't give us the opportunity to share like our own stories. And I think that's the point. I think the point is, yeah, we should be able to claim ourselves as ourselves. We don't need identities in terms of our jobs, what we're good for, what we contribute. Um, that's bullshit. And if we're going to keep putting this pressure on people to decide what we're going to be when we grow up, and are we going to get educated? How are we going to get our kids the best advantages? And I figure, fuck, we better work on our own mental health as adults. And we better recognize our childish ways and, just start dealing with those things. I mean, I'm the first one to call myself out. So I think it's that if adults can learn to be brave enough to say, hey, I was wrong, I messed up. Can we give that another shot? Like, is there any room, but I think there's plenty of psychopaths out there that really do not care. And that's one thing I was really naive to. That was my childhood naivete that I've carried with me for nearly 40 years. Is like I thought that like most people were genuinely good. But there's definitely, plenty of psychos out there that literally they do not care. And so we do have to protect ourselves from that. We do have to set boundaries. And it can be as simple as just staying calm when one of your loved ones is freaking out about something that they care about, that they're scared about. Usually their anger comes from fear, I believe. And so if you can, you give them that space to air their grievance and you don't poke the bear. And, you speak your piece to the extent, but you don't have to push an argument. If they're not ready to see things, then okay. Like, it doesn't really convince people your argument when you just yell and scream at them. So I think that is a lost art. And I feel like, so many of these identity politic arguments, they pretend that they're defending people against a bully, and they call all these people bullies and they use the same bully tactics. So I just don't see how that works. I just don't see that. I've been really grateful. I've been able to like really temper my emotions, and when stuff pisses me off, that's where I start to like really examine myself and figure out, like, "Oh my god, I'm being so much the opposite of what I pretend to be right now." You know, do I just need to drink some water and eat something? Do I just need to ask my family to let me rest for a few minutes? Sadly, it can be pretty simple solutions, like taking care of myself, asking for space, asking for some time, telling folks around me what I need, you know? So, yeah, it's been, a roller coaster, but I know that I'm really grateful for the challenges I've been able to overcome, and it feels awesome that I'm realizing, like, a lot of the abuse that I've gone through, and so, um, I don't know, I think I had some guilt about being abused, but not being that bad abused. Like, knowing that other people had it worse, and so I, like, felt I wasn't allowed to feel bad about whatever things I had experienced. So that's kind of something weird I've been realizing about myself and my self-sabotage. But I've been reading this, today, Puzzling People: The Labyrinth of the Psychopath by Thomas Sheridan. Um, I just wanted to read the introduction. Dedicated to victims of psychopaths everywhere. It wasn't your fault. You're not alone, and you no longer need to suffer. So I just truly believe we're all suffering, especially the real angry troll bullies out there. They're probably the most heartbroken and the most lost. And so it's really given me a lot of peace to see the people that I once hated and despised, as like the people probably treated just the most awful. And I just feel like we probably have these generational traumas, and however your spiritual foundations describe it in whatever vocabulary, it could be a jinn, a demon, um a psychopath. I wonder if these are things manifested by these generational traumas, and folks do not have the tools, the mental, emotional intelligence tools, to work through these really, really hard things. And I know a lot of us keep ourselves extremely busy to, you know, not have to face our mental health. Um, and I just wonder if that's the why man's desire to build empire, always becomes corrupt and just horrible. And I just wonder so much. I mean, how much of our history have we literally buried as our emotional trauma? You know, how much of our magic and our our literal history, um, our giants and our cities of antiquity, and there's so many cool theories out there of, just the origins of humanity, and, could it be aliens, or is it higher or lower density planes? There's so many weird theories out there that I'm not an expert on any of this stuff. I'm just like discovering it. And my kid imaginative brain just thinks, oh, maybe that would be so cool if some of these things were true. But then there's always the doom and gloom side. And so I don't know. I'm just glad that I'm able to discover, new people all the time, even through this weird um, social media life that people are getting conditioned into. It's like, well, at least there's a few folks that I get to connect with, and at least I get this opportunity to process myself and put myself out there in a new way, because maybe it does retrain the digital world because I put my input out there, and these few friends that I have that give this a chance, I think it does matter, because I do hope one day my kids forget about these videos that I was doing when they were growing up, and then they go back and they can look at them and they can be like, "Man, our mom was such a goofball. She was so silly." But, they're gonna be glad to have some kind of record, um, because this is such a crazy time. And I would have loved to hear my mom's stories of, the '70s and the '80s and the '90s when I was growing up. So, I think this is a really cool project, and I think my few friends that got me started with this, I started back in February, at the end of February this year, and it's just been awesome because I really look forward to, um, the free flow of the conversations, but I've definitely been feeling like I prepare more and more each time I set a date for and a time for the show. And I do like this 10 o'clock hour just because it's a nice reflection time at the end of the day. It's become a really cool little ritual. Um, and Yeah, I've just been digging into my books and want to keep sharing those with you, because I think that's why humans want to share stories and, our recommendations and our movies and stuff. We want to share our interests so we have somebody else to talk to about them. So please keep me in mind when you find a really interesting YouTube channel or some other kind of media. I'd love to hear about it and um, get a kind of dialogue going. Some of the books I'm going to be trying to invest in the coming months are by a woman named Kirby Summers. Um, I'm going to be doing some future videos about her topics. Um, but she just makes me think about um, this idea of the Epstein Maxwell situation, and this idea of like trafficking people. And I suspect this is something that's been going on for time immemorial, as far as humans go. Um, I just think our species is we're not so good at like waving the peace flag first. You know what I mean? Um, I think some of us have heard some really interesting stories about, you know, far in the past, slavery, human trafficking. And I heard this theory this week, that, this has been going on since, forever. And the reason they do it is because the people are just about to, you know, blow up. Every time there's about to be an uprising, the empire kind of has to quash quash everything, bury the town, displace the people. So I think that's an interesting theory. Um, and so yeah, as I talk about that, when I compare um like a wartime situation, in our modern American history, that's pretty shallow as far as like normal kids education in history is pretty lame. You really don't get a very good grasp of anything. But what they gloss over is there's always the bad guy and the hero always comes in and saves the day, and it's all our comic books and all of our hero stories, we have this theme. So the bad guy's always kind of dumb or creepy or, obviously bad. The creepy guy's obviously a creep. The bad guy's obviously the bad guy, the big bad wolf. But we don't think about how, like, and this is something that Kirby Summers is pointing out in her work because she's doing deep dives into all the people that, Maxwell and Epstein knew and what's behind it. Because it's not just about this interest in some perverted thing. Because, yeah, the act of, transferring people for slavery or sex or whatever, that's all bad. Like, obviously, that's obviously bad. But why is it such a big deal? Well, yeah, sure, there's interest in it. But then how do these elites use it as like a tool? And they use it as a tool for blackmail, you know? And I just think that's where we don't do any touching of the truth in media anymore because we can't. The media has been bought out. I think in 2020, it was something like pharmaceutical industries accounted for 75% of advertising and major media, billions of dollars. So how's the media gonna call out the industry that's paying for all of their commercials? And I've failed to see the red flags there when I worked at PBS because we did a local show and we were sponsored by a local mining company, and we did an episode about a mining disaster, and coincidentally our show was canceled after that. So I didn't see red flags all over the place. But I don't think it was too late for me. I mean, I think there's definitely signs that folks are never going to even ask questions because they just have to stick to their worldviews. And I think that's okay if people want to choose that. I don't know what happens in the afterlife. That's all conjecture. So, I'm not asking people to break their worldviews. But I think a lot of folks have these broken worldviews and they're looking for something, you know, they're just floundering. And so that's where I'm at because I busted through the BS long ago and was just floundering like a dummy, trying to cling to all this Disney pop culture, La La Land, Santa Claus, BS. And I so desperately wanted to believe, even after it was proven to be untrue. There were so many things I just wanted to believe in. And so, yeah, I think when you can be strong enough to like ask questions, then you're cool. Then things don't scare you as bad. They upset you. Um But it's like somehow it's easier to combust that and make it productive, you know? Um there's folks that just blow their freaking lids and you can tell like they're frustrated, you know, but I don't really find myself getting that way anymore, which is pretty cool because I used to be like that. I used to be a pretty volatile person. And so I still need to work on that for sure. I think again, you're not ever done with your work, with your therapy, you just keep going at it, you know. and if it's like an octave scale. So you can play around across the keyboard, you know, um, endless possibilities, but you can still come around to the same notes. And, I think there's a lot of themes in our lives that repeat. And, that's the beauty of music as a comparison to a lot of things, I think, because I recently watched a talk by Professor Hamamoto, and he just asked people to stop listening to recorded music and make their own. And I believe that very day or the following day, I was with my little 3-year-old nephews, and they picked up some watering cans from my front yard, some metal watering cans, and they put their mouths up to the spout, and they just went, "Huh, huh, huh," and they just created this beautiful, kind of haunting chant, and I just thought, "Holy moly, I'm so lucky I could recognize what they're doing right now." That is that's just like that was so cool to see that, and then I was like, "Yeah, guys, keep that going," and they were so entertained in the front yard for, about an hour, and, no meltdowns in an hour with twins. It was awesome, and I just thought, "Man, I'm so lucky that I get to make music with pots and pans with these little kids." And, you know, those are the magic little moments, you know? And then when they have meltdowns, I'm really grateful when their mom comes back and picks them up. And I'm grateful my kids are getting bigger and they're interested in learning things now. And, um, I'm having all these memories flood back to me from when I was their age. That's a trip. Um, so yeah, I've just been having some really intense dreams as well. Been really tired. Um, I literally got knocked on my ass about a week ago, and it just felt crazy because I've been so hyper aware of this pain, and I'm so grateful it wasn't worse, and I've still been able to basically do everything that I need to. It hurts, and I have to take it more slowly, and I just thought, "Man, I if I'm not nourishing myself, then I'm no good to this family." And I don't know, I just think I was, um, told to just, yeah, take it easy, have my ambition and everything like that, but yeah, I can slow it down. I can have a steady tempo, slow, methodic, you know, really enjoy the books I'm reading, really enjoy the little moments in my life. So I'm really fortunate to be able to do that when it feels like the world's collapsing and there's so much doom and gloom, so much bad weather everywhere, you know, fires in the Southwest the same day as blizzards. Everybody in the lower 48 better be checking the weather report where they're at right now. And it's that stuff's been crazy. All the stuff we're finding out about space weather and man, there's so much. I want to put my tinfoil hat on every night with you guys and talk about all the weirdest of the weird stuff. But I have to take it slow and methodical. But if you haven't heard of Kirby Summers, I think she's doing some really important work, um, deep diving down the rabbit hole. She's got a lot of books she's publishing. They're available on her website because I think the big dog retailer has taken her down. They've flagged her um, because there's really important people out there that want to bury everything. That's obvious. That's so clear. I mean, I want to bury plenty of things, and I'm nobody. I'm a shithead, know nothing, idiot. And so, yeah, these people that actually have things to lose, yeah, of course. I'm not afraid to put my name and my face out here with my shitty video camera because I really have nothing left to lose at this point. We are clearly just being lined up to be slaughtered. And like folks that call us crazy for believing that, like again, I'm not mad at them anymore. It used to hurt my feelings. I used to feel excluded. I used to feel like I wanted to fit in with everybody, but you know what? I can be nice to anybody I want to. Like, they are not going to change me because they want to be assholes. But unfortunately, it's pretty dangerous to, expose these folks. And so there's other people doing the work. I don't know that I'd be willing to do the work that Kirby Summers does or that Mae Brussel did. But you can check out the Mae Brussel project on YouTube. They're uploading all of her archives. Like, it's just a huge, huge archive of her work from back in the 70s. And Kirby Summers, she's doing it now, talking about, a topic that's happening now. There's a lot of folks looking back at old, thought we had it settled cases, such as David Berkowitz, the Son of Sam stuff that Manny Grossman is covering. Thomas Horan, I believe, Professor Dad, he's talking about the West Memphis 3 case, which I find really fascinating because I listened to a few talks by Damien Eccles, and I think he's really fascinating. But the West Memphis 3 case is, it's worth looking into. There's a lot of things from the past that are worth looking into. And I just hope we can keep doing this stuff, keep having these interesting conversations. Speaking of the past, one final book I want to show you that I dug out of my archives. It's might be hard to read, but it's Folklore and Symbolism of Flowers, Plants, and Trees from Ernst and Johanna Lenner. And I always like to look at publishers. This is from Dover Publications, and I've collected a lot of the Dover coloring books over the years. You can actually find a lot of them in places like museum gift shops and these kind of fancy or expensive retailers. But I thought this was really beautiful because they have these old type, these are glossy pages. So these are prints from like the 1600s. This page is the language of flowers. And that's something I've been studying with my herbal group called The Grove. It's $25 a month, and we talk about plants. And I've really found that to be nourishing to me. in the Grove, we're doing book clubs on these 2 books. Josh Williams, Spiritual Herbalism, The Magic and Medicine of the Plants by Josh Williams. He runs the Grove, and he's just an awesome person. His channel on YouTube is called The Green Art, and he introduced me to Wolf D. Storrell, The Herbal Lore of Wise Women and Wort Hunters, The Healing Power of Medicinal Plants. So I've been really into that stuff. I just think it's been so positive for me, both in the spiritual place, in the just building a garden, that I slowly but surely learn all these plants. And my sweet friend thinks I know everything about plants, and I don't. But no, it is amazing just how much you get to know when you spend the time, right? And I think that's the only way we get to know things is in the doing. In the doing is the knowing. When if you feel like, okay, I was taught that, I learned that. Like, that might be while you're sitting in a lesson with the instructor. But yeah, the knowing is in the doing by yourself when you're screwing around and figuring it out. And I think there's, there's something to be said about intentions. I mean, we can definitely screw things up when we had good intentions. But I feel like there's people who they do these experiments on us without a care in the world. We're like a fish that they just hooked on a line, took a trophy photo of it, throw it back downstream. Maybe it'll survive, maybe it won't. It doesn't matter to the fishermen in some cases. And so I just feel like, yeah, maybe we just got to recognize that there's some folks out there that they're doing their experiments for reasons we can't even comprehend, I'm doing experiments in my kitchen because I'm trying to substitute one ingredient for another and still have my kids, eat the food, you know? It's way different. I'm trying to experiment with, different kinds of potting soils and different plants and different varieties of seeds. These folks are trying to, bring back a bird flu and, bring us a whole slew of new ways to, make sure we get a update on this or that in a timely fashion so that we're allowed to do something, But folks will still argue about how much better off we would be if everybody just towed the line and everybody just went along with the narrative. So I'm not going to get mad at those folks, like my brother-in-law. I mean, it'd be so funny if he ever found these videos and watched them. Because he's a really good guy, But he just is so bombastic and he's my husband's way older brother. 12 years older. And so it's funny because he just has never treated my husband like he's a grown-up. But, he's a bachelor and stuff, and so I just always laugh, he doesn't have a clue. He doesn't have a house, he doesn't have kids, he doesn't have things he actually has to worry about, in the same sense. And he is watching sports all the time and getting his media from one source. And so I get it. I totally understand why he's why he acts the way he does. It makes sense. He's not a psycho. He's actually a sweet guy. He just, he's misguided, and I was misguided as well. So, I just feel I'm really, really fortunate. I've had a lot of varied points of view, um, that I've been able to pay attention to because I've been able to spend time with different people and learn to respect them. And, a lot of these folks have challenged me in different ways. One of my buddies had been trying to send me, he introduced me to Thomas Sheridan, but, he was trying to introduce me to Mark Passio. And for years, I could not comprehend Mark Passio's, the best and truest part of his message. I couldn't get it. I was just I was so I was so well, I think what happens with abused women in particular, but probably all abused folks, is especially if it's like the verbal abuse. And we don't often give credence. I mean, I didn't give credence to my verbal abuse. I thought it like all had to be physical or else, nothing. That's another point Kirby Summers makes, is like in terms of trafficking people. Like you think of people being brought out of town, or like people literally disappearing from school, or you know whatever, but like that doesn't necessarily have to be the case. They can be being used as dates for somebody, and they can still be going to school. Maybe they're not living with their parents. Maybe they had a fallout with their parents in high school or something like that. But like, and there's a lot of folks that are talking about like there's 800,000 missing kids a year or something like that. And maybe I don't have all the numbers, but I think there is something to be said about the argument that there may be a lot of kids that tend to run away and come back and have these tumultuous relationships with parents. And so maybe they are reported multiple times a year. And so that's why the numbers are really, really high. I tend to think that there's a lot of different things going on. And the way that we keep stats now, we pretend like we can answer everything with numbers because we have computers and we have really smart people. But I think it's true. You can always get numbers to prove your agenda. So we just need to be very careful about being absolute about these things. We can reference these things, and then maybe we can discern them and break it down and ponder it, but I think it's important to think about how when it comes to abuse, maybe it's phone call harassment, you know, and maybe you're just minding your own business in the home where you live, and you're a grown up, and you're a legal adult, and somebody is harassing you to go on dates, or whatever. That can be human trafficking as well. That's the same stuff. So I just think we need to remember that's like physical and verbal abuse. In the mind, they have the same effect. So I was never able to acknowledge the full level of my susceptibility to verbal abuse. And that's one thing I could not deal with Mark Passio, because he was just he gets so fucking nuts. It's almost funny now, because I realize, like, even despite whatever that is for him personally, that doesn't distract from a lot of the truth in his message. So, um, just we've gotta be very discerning, you know? And that's why I think it's so dangerous to censor things because, um, we we need to know what people are thinking. And maybe it helps us do more maybe it encourages us to do more research to prove them wrong. And it's not necessarily out of spite, but maybe they were a catalyst to you caring about a subject. So I don't think we should debase these humans for asking questions or for having incorrect hypotheses. But I think we've proven with our supposed science-based evidence fiasco that we're in the middle of right now, that when you have private companies that are paying for all of their own trials, it's actually in their best interest to bury the negative results. And, those people are incentivized to prove their original hypotheses. So it's like, if I'm cooking dinner, it doesn't matter what my hypothesis is about if I can substitute an ingredient or not. The kids are going to tell me, yeah, mom, that was a good meal, or they're going to shove it back at me. you know, Kids are honest. They're not going to BS me. So, these companies, they got us by the balls because I can say I want to be whatever gender I want to be at any second, and a doctor in the US is now forced to affirm the gender that I choose to be at that time. And that's insane when it comes to letting women actually participate in women's sports. And if folks don't want to talk to me anymore because of these views, I am just sorry for them because they're missing out on very interesting and weird and dynamic conversations. So, if you made it this far, thank you so, so much. It's really liberating to be uh, speaking freely. So I hope you have a wonderful night. Please send me your books, your ideas, whatever thoughts you might have. If you don't feel comfortable leaving comments, that's cool. Just if you don't mind, keep watching. Watch some of the old videos, and I'll talk to you real soon. Thanks.